Hello, welcome to this presentation on long distance call, which is a school-wide leadership assessment and feedback system for remote teaching and learning used for school improvement planning. So long distance call is derived from the evidence-based comprehensive assessment of leadership for learning, or CALL. That's what CALL means within long distance call. So then what is CALL? Well, it's an online, formative assessment and feedback system designed to measure school-wide distributed leadership. By formative, we mean that it's not meant to be taken just once. It's not meant to provide a grade of a school. It's meant to promote progress and growth over time. The feedback system, which you can see in another video following this, provides action-based data, and we are focusing on distributed leadership. That's one of the core principles with CALL and all versions of CALL. So then, long distance call takes that framework and we're looking at leadership within the remote teaching and learning environment. So one of the core principles within CALL is this idea of how we look at leadership within a school. If we wanted to assess and support leadership and we only focused on that one individual person, we would be missing a lot of what else is happening throughout the school. And that actually leadership is the result of various people who are interacting with one another, who are taking on leadership responsibilities. It's not just the one singular principal doing that work, although that person's work is obviously very important. But oftentimes the principal acts more like an orchestra conductor who's coordinating the work in the school, making sure everything is effective, efficient, harmonious, to go with the metaphor here. It's not just one principal who's doing all that work. And this is what we mean by distributed leadership that is distributed throughout the building. And if we really want to get a sense of how effective leadership is, we should focus on the work that's being done rather than focus on one individual person. So that is the foundation behind call and long distance call. And here's how it works. It begins with a multi-source survey. So in a given school, we'd have all the teachers and administrators and an instructional support staff and student support staff responding to questions on the survey. And that survey is focusing on leadership tasks. So we're not as concerned about who's doing the work, but more concerned about how effective is this work. And that's what we mean by distributed leadership, focusing on the work. And as a result, when the data comes out in the formative feedback system, school leaders and district leaders and coaches are able to receive targeted data to support their school improvement work. So that's true of all versions of call. But within long distance call for remote teaching and learning, we can look at some of the key characteristics there as well. Obviously, this is a unique situation that all schools are going through if they are operating within the virtual school environment. So we want to ask the question, how's it going? And it's not as easy to answer these days. It's not as if the principal can walk down the school hallway and pop into a classroom and talk to teachers and talk to students. It's much more complicated. So this gives us an opportunity to assess opportunities for growth in the remote teaching and learning environment. We also, within long distance call itself, can compare data from the in-person and online school environments. We are asking about practices in the in-person environment as well as in virtual, and that way we can look and see where practices have improved, where they might have slipped, and see how we can target our efforts to either maintain a strength or improve a practice where necessary. Obviously, during these times, collecting data is going to be challenging. We've relied on certain kind of data in the past, and with long distance call, this gives us some different ways to look at data around how we're working in the school and how we can improve upon our teaching practices, our leadership practices, all in the name of enhancing student learning. It's also an opportunity to show to the school community, whether that be the school board, families, the school community at large, that we are continuing the important work of looking to improve our school through improved leadership practices, improved instructional practices, which again enhance student learning. The long distance call survey activity can be completed from any place at any time because it's all online, which is conducive to the situation that we are in these days. And we can also view the results immediately after survey administration. It doesn't go back to any lab that requires number crunching. School leaders, district leaders, coaches can view their data right away and start to make adjustments as necessary. I want to emphasize the differences between this approach within long distance call and more traditional approaches to leadership assessments or principal evaluations. So this question is not from long distance call. It's not from any specific survey actually, but it does show how traditional leadership assessments in schools have been conducted for quite some time. This question is asking, how effective is the principal in implementing professional development activities for remote teaching and learning? So you can see that the focus of the question is on the principal specifically. You can also see that the response options is a traditional rating scale from not effective to extremely effective. Well, this question could be of value in some degree, but also could be problematic because what if it's not the principal who's doing the work of implementing professional development activities? What if it's an assistant principal or a teacher leader or a district leader? We don't know from school to school who's doing what work. And actually, what we care more about are the actual activities themselves. So thinking about this question on long distance call, we take the same construct, the same idea, and ask about it this way on long distance call. Which of the following best describes how well additional professional development activities were implemented to support remote teaching and learning? So now you can see that the focus of the question is on the actual PD activities themselves. And the response options are potential examples of what's happening in the school. So now we're focusing on the work. As a teacher or an administrator, if I'm taking the survey, I'm engaged in reflection. I'm thinking about the work that's happening in the school. And because the question is focusing on specific practices, we can look to the items when we get the data and perhaps look at each individual item and say, here's something we could be doing differently because it's action-based data. The last thing to think about here is how we use data for school improvement planning or professional development planning in any school context. Most school improvement plans have a strong focus on outcomes, which makes sense. We want to see where we are with, say, fifth grade reading scores, and here's where we want to be. And then we have the people who are responsible for meeting those outcomes, reaching those goals. Well, there's a lot of things that happen in between the people and the outcomes that we don't necessarily incorporate into our school improvement plan. And those things would be the various tasks and activities and routines and practices, programs, processes, really the things that people do. If we're going to look at school improvement, let's improve what we do. And that's what's important here. We're not doing this to call people out or to shame people. We want to identify what we could be doing differently. And in this case, we're looking at what leaders do, and not just formal leaders, informal leaders as well. And that's key to what we're doing with call and long distance call. We invite you to learn more about long distance call by going to leadershipforlearning.org. There you can learn about call in general and the different versions of call, including this version for remote teaching and learning. You can look at a sample survey, a sample feedback report, and following this video, you can also look at a demo of the feedback report in action. Thank you for your time today, and please contact us for more information. We'd be happy to meet with you one-to-one and answer any questions you have. And for those of you who are engaged in the remote teaching and learning environments, best of luck with all that you're doing, and thank you for all that you're doing.